first and last name?
Bob Clark, CLARK.
And then the company.
Port Fuels and Material Services.
Okay. And tell me about this project.
This project is a very unique combination of new technologies. It's gasification and plasma conversion. It takes organic components and turns them into energy.
How does it do that?
Sorry?
How does it do that?
Well, first of all, in a gasifier, you have the first stage in which you have any organic component turned into a gasified fluid. It's not incineration and it's not combustion. It's not even close because in gasifications you have deprivation of oxygen and there's no flame. So what you do in the first stage is you create this gasified fluid that then goes into the second chamber, which is plasma conversion. The plasma converter works at 6,000 to 10,000 degrees C, and it cracks the compound molecular structure into simple molecules. And the end result is you have a very, very clean synthetic gas.
So you end up with a clean synthetic gas, but where does the other material go, I suppose?
The waste material is converted into gas, a gaseous fluid. And the organic component is what changes into an energy medium. The inorganic, if you could think of gravel or soil or stones, as inorganic material. In the plasma converter, because of the intense heat, it turns into a vitrified byproduct, which is actually a commercial product. It's called plasma rock. It comes out the bottom as a commercial product. And the synthetic gas comes out of the top in a very clean medium that can be used for heat, electricity, solid oxide fuel cells, hydrogen, chemical, a number of different things. Gas to liquids. There's a number of different uses depending on what you want or what the client wants to have as an end product.
What sort of emissions are there?
The emissions are difficult for the non-scientific to understand, but let me simplify it. This is essentially it's a closed system. So when I just described the plasma converter and the gasifier, you go into a cooling and cleaning process, and then at the end you have a synthetic gas. The synthetic gas goes into, for example, a gas engine. The gas engine has an emission. So it's theoretically as close to emission-free as possible because you have a synthetic gas in a closed system that ends up in an engine, and an engine would have an emission. And those are very, very standard. The gas engines are standard. They have all kinds of established controls on them, so that should not be an issue.
You can understand after Swaru and Hamilton that people in this community are very concerned about air pollution, air quality. It's already an area that has poor air quality.
Yes.
What would you say to those people?
Well, we're very aware of the air emissions issue in Hamilton. I personally am very well aware because I come from Pittsburgh and Bethlehem, which are very big industrial towns that have a lot of emission issues over the years, and especially with the US EPA. We're in the midst right now of the process for review with the Ministry of Environment. We have our expert permitting team from the Conestoga Rovers and Association that have started the process with us about a month ago. We're doing air studies, we're doing every kind of study, because our understanding is that you have a standard right now. There's a standard that you want to improve. You don't want to have anything added to it. The goal of what we're doing is we take all these wastes. These wastes would theoretically end up in a landfill or in an incinerator or something that doesn't create extra emissions. So what we're looking for is we're looking to reduce that. Like landfills, for example, they create methane, which is 20 times worse than carbon dioxide. We're trying to take the waste as close to the source as possible, reduce my term is a negative carbon footprint, because when you take a waste, you could be shipping it to Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. There's a large carbon transportation footprint associated with it at all. We're trying to come up with a system that works as close to the source as possible, meaning if you have the waste goes into our system, and then hopefully the local tenants at the port will be the recipients of the electricity, the heat, the synthetic gas.
Why on the water?
Well, the water is one area, but the real concept is what we refer to as an IREP. That's an integrated recycling energy park, which means you have an industrial hub, and you have an industrial hub that can be self-sufficient. This is where I'm getting to the footprint, the carbon footprint, and reducing the carbon footprint. In an industrial hub like this IREP that I'm referring to, is that you have the ability of taking the waste streams very locally, close, processing it, and then returning it. The port is an excellent example of an industrial facility. It's an industrial port.
Wouldn't you be causing more pollution in the water by using water?
No. You're not creating water. This is a closed loop system that uses very little water. And what I mean by closed loop is when you fill the system up, there's very little water that you have to even worry about as a wastewater or a cleanup water. It's a very tight system. So there's very little makeup feeds, and there's very little water to be processed.
So there'll be no water emissions at all?
Water emissions?
Or discharge, sorry, correction.
There will be a minor amount of water that will be cleaned up prior to being discharged into the system. So that would be, it's a good question. When you think of emissions, you think land, air, and water, as you just asked. Very little water used in the system, very little makeup water, very little water that will discharge into the system.
Okay, you're on Port Authority lands. Is that specifically because you're looking to have this as a plant that operates under the Port Authority's jurisdiction and not the city's planning jurisdiction, or is it just that this is vacant land that's available?
Actually, that thought never came up. The thought was that this is an industrial hub, and the industrial hub is what we're looking for. The fact that it's leased property of the port is just happenstance. We can go anywhere. We can go Niagara, we can go Oshawa, we can go anywhere that the ability is there. But we've been working in this area for a while, and the port is very amenable to working with us. And so this is one of 8 locations that we looked at, and this looks like it's the best. But it refers to the industrial concept.
So back from the spec, take me back to the closed loop for a second. So would you even need a stack then that people would recognize as such, or?
A stack. You'd recognize a stack nowhere close like the steel companies or whatever else. There'll be a engine exhaust. Will have a stack. All engines have exhaust. There'll be a thermal oxidizer, which is all system has when you do a normal startup and shutdown. And for emergencies, that's when we start up the system. We bring it up to temperature. We use natural gas to heat everything up, and then that goes into a thermal oxidizer. So you'll have 2 things that you could think of, but as you look outside and you see those stacks, you'll never see them. Everything looks like a standard industrial building.
Forgive me, what would the facility be venting? Like steam or anything?
Venting?
Sorry, that's probably an
What would be the emissions? What would the emissions
consist
consist of?
will go to the 2 areas that I just described. One is coming off of the exhaust of the engines. Gas engines will have an exhaust, so that would be an emission.
But that wouldn't be on site, that would be at the end of whoever's using your gas, no?
The gas engines create the electricity.
Okay.
And the electricity then is transmitted across lines. On our property, those gas engines will have an emission.
Okay. So, yeah, I thought you were selling the gas potentially too.
We can do that too. One of the options is that you can transport this gas. You can do a direct hookup to the other buildings that are there on Hamilton Court, and you can just pump the gas to them.
So you could sell electricity or gas as an alternative.
Electricity or gas or heat or solid oxide fuel cells, which is another way to improve the overall efficiency. In levels of efficiency for a set amount of input, fuel input, You have gas engines and you have gas turbines. The next level up is solid oxide fuel cells because that goes for both electricity and heat. There are a lot of things that you could use with it. You could go gas to liquid. Not here, but at other locations that we're dealing with, they would like to have a liquid.
But bottom line, any emissions to air from your facility would be at the stage where you're actually converting the gas into electricity with your engines.
Yes.
So you're having this open house tonight. You've had no communications with the City of Hamilton beyond a letter to the Economic Development Committee clerk that you were having this open house. Where are you at on planning process? And if you've got no planning process with the city, do you have a planning process with the Port Authority underway?
I'm glad you asked the question and said there's no communications. We've had communications for years. We've had communications last 18th and 19th of September. We co-sponsored a conference at McMaster University. We talked about this at great length. Your mayor came and kicked off the event. We've had senators, we've had officials. We haven't been quiet.
So you said you had communications with the mayor on September 18th and 19th. During those communications, were you specifically discussing this project?
Our whole conference on the 18th and 19th of September at McMaster University was talking about the green environment. Very specifically, one of the topics, several of the topics, talked about what we're going to be doing here in Hamilton.
So you did discuss this with the mayor on September 18th and 19th?
Yes.
Can you tell me more about the facility that you guys have in the UK and how that would compare to what you're looking at?
If I could go back to Joey for a minute. Is there any other question?
Well, so planning process-wise, you've had discussions with the mayor, but you have not yet submitted anything
We've
formal
had
to the
informal
city.
discussions with the mayor and with everybody that we can possibly think of. But then on April 3rd, we had the notice of commencement, which is a formal notification. We've sent letters out to designated ministry officials, city officials, First Nations, establishments within 500 meters of our current location, follow the directions that we've received from our advisors, Conestoga Rovers and Associates, and try to do everything according to the checkbox to make sure that we don't miss a step. The last thing I want to do is miss a step. If anybody has any questions, we're opening up our website tomorrow. We'll have access for questions to come in, questions to be returned. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to you.
No, I just wanted to say, if you could talk a little bit about the facility you guys are already running in the UK and how that would compare to what you're proposing here.
Yeah, the facility that we have in the UK has been running for 5 or 6 years right now. And if you've had a chance to walk around and see the technology, as I described earlier, it's a combination of a gasifier and a plasma converter, which is actually the cleaner conditioner used in series. That's been operating for at least 6 years. We have actually 2 pilot installations there, and on the same location, there is another facility separately owned that is precious metal recovery facility. So actually have 3 pilot facilities at one location, and you wouldn't recognize it. You look out the window and you see a normal warehouse.
But is that working commercially, or is that just a pilot?
No, it's in between. It's a pilot facility, but we do commercial work there as well. There are a lot of different places that we're going and talking to right now. We've tested dozens and dozens and dozens of materials, some of which we've tested commercially as a prerequisite to establishing a plant. So when we talk to potential clients, they give us a material characterization of the type of material that they want to go and evaluate. There's a number of reasons for that, but probably the most important one is to determine the calorific value of that material, so that they can determine if I use this material in this combination, put it into your system, this is the amount of electricity I have going out the back end, and therefore they can build a business model. So we do that from a characterization standpoint, we replicate that, or they send us the actual physical material to do at that location, and that location is fully licensed for doing it.
And is that the only location you guys have?
That is the only location that has both of these operating in series. There are 100 locations of either one, either the gasifier or this particular plasma converter that we use, operating commercial.
So gasification is not a new concept, but it's the plasma side of it that's somewhat newer, right? Is that right?
Yeah, good comment. Gasification has been around since the early 1800s. Plasma actually has been around in this particular type of application probably early 1900s. Plasma has been used singularly by itself for metallurgical applications. The metal industry has been using this for metal cutting, metal depositions, electric arc furnace dust, consolidations of precious metal, waste vitrification. Places like Japan that have a high tariff, high incentivization, this is some small island nation, they've used plasma facilities. The uniqueness is what you described. It's the series application. We have patents now in 56 patents, probably 40 countries, that show the efficiency of using the fluidized bed gasifier in tandem with the plasma converter as a conditioner to improve on a raw cutting syngas into a very refined, ultra-clean synthetic gas.
The MOE has actually told me as well that you guys haven't started a process with them whatsoever in terms of going through the approvals process yet. So that seems a little counter to what's going on here today.
It's a little counter to what I understand too. It means what you started with. I think if I read the article says there's nothing been submitted to them, and that part is absolutely correct. So maybe just phraseology, because we've been in discussions for a while. We have kind of Silver Rovers and Associates assisting us in the permitting application process, but we have not officially submitted anything for their review. That is correct. So it may just be an interpretation in words.
Why is it then that you haven't submitted anything?
It takes time. It takes a lot of time. We have a lot of studies to go through. One of the most important one is the air study here in Hamilton. You have to have a baseline, you have to look for our emissions, we have a plant design. Plant design's got to be evaluated by a lot of the engineering organizations, then by the environmental organizations. It's just time consuming. That's all.
How long, if everything went according to plan? We'll see what's
We're going through an environmental screening process, and then the ECA work, and from what I understand, that's about a year's process. And that's if you don't have any hiccups, or you don't have any other additional requests, you don't have any other questions that come up that need to be done, additional surveys, things that would do. So it depends on how efficient we collectively are with our groups that are assisting, our consultants that are assisting us, and any questions that the public may have, any questions that come up as a result of the studies that we're going to go in. Minimum of a year.
before you even break ground?
It wouldn't be prudent to officially break ground, as you say, and start the construction unless you have the permits. Because the permits are the ones that actually say go. So it costs a lot of money to go and start the construction, and then the permit not come through. I think that would be impractical. So we're spending a lot of our time and effort right now to do our homework and to make sure that we have everything answered correctly.
How much does this cost for the project?
That we're working on. I can't give you a straight answer yet because when you do the design work, then you have to go out and you put a tender out to engineering companies for things like EPC, engineering procurement construction contracts. So a lot will depend on the final bids that we receive from our contractors.
What about in terms of jobs? How many people would it take to run a place like this?
Let's talk about that. You're going to have a lot of work up front, just with whoever does the engineering. The actual construction work and commissioning, you've got about 18 months worth of work to start with, probably another 6 months worth of commissioning time. You have, depending on the final configuration, you could have 30, 50, 60 people. It really depends on the final configuration. If you're going to run 2 shifts, 3 shifts, run 5 days, run 7 days, but we're looking at initial construction jobs. We're looking at operations. We're looking at companies to come in and operate this full time. So We're looking at having all of this done locally.
But once you say like construction and all the initial implementation is out of the way, it's anywhere from 30 to 50 people.
Yeah, probably closer to 50. My guess. Sure.
How long has the company existed?
The Leverage Green Energy is a fund.
Not that one, the port fuels.
Oh, the port fuel we just incorporated last year.
So why a shell company?
What do you mean, Shell?
Well, I mean, it has no history. It's like a throwaway cell phone. It's just the company you've created for this job.
It is called a special purpose vehicle.
Right.
It's not a telephone. It's a special
Right, but
purpose vehicle.
it
It's a Canadian.
still basically exists only for this project. And if this project, I mean, why not call it the parent company, LGFE, whatever that is?
LGE is a private equity fund. We have investments in a lot of different companies and a lot of different technologies. What we did is we funded this particular project. We put our money into this particular project. It's a Canadian company. It's a self-standing, self-funded company.
Well, if it's LGE funded company, it's really an American funded company, but that's besides the point. I guess what I'm wondering is why not use an existing company? Like you have a different company name operating in Britain, in Swindon, it's a different company name. So this is a different company here. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like that game with the little ball that you shuffle things around in. It's like I mean, from someone who lives here, it's like the company exists to hide something.
No, it's a shame you feel that way. And in business, you have.
It is Thursday before a long weekend.
Well, that's fine. What we're trying to do is trying to come here and talk to a lot of different people. Now, as I started to say, Leverage Green Energy is an international fund. We have international investors, a lot of Scandinavian pension funds, a lot of different organizations that support us. And the effort and the intention of our fund is to create green, sustainable energy, to reduce the carbon footprint throughout the world. That is our goal. We set up lots of different companies. They each have a name. They're not a telephone. They each have a name. And they're turned over, and we have equity partners that are local. They're a local, and this will be a local Canadian-owned company.
So where can we find the science and the reports that backed up your claims on the board?
You'll have most of that through the environmental process right now. The company that is called Advanced Plasma Power that you referenced over in Swindon, that company and the other company called Tektronix. Tektronix is the plasma company. They developed the plasma system and developed APP because it's the waste to energy company. They've been operating since 1965. They have 85 commercial operations established globally throughout the world. Throughout the world. The documentation is available. Will be available through the regulator. It will be available on our websites when we get our website set up starting tomorrow. I think it's just waiting for us to push the button after tonight's open house.
And in the future, 5-10 years down the road, if this is successful, do you plan to also process toxic waste?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Do you plan to also process toxic waste, hazardous materials?
Technically, it has the capability of doing that, but this isn't what this is designed to do right here, right now.
But it could be planned to do that in the future.
Other companies and other locations are doing that because it does have the technical capabilities. Our goal is to create energy from waste.
So you're not saying that in the future you will not process hazardous waste?
I'm saying it has the capability. I don't want to process hazardous waste right now.
But you're not saying you won't?
I don't have to. I don't have to. It's a business decision. We don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. I don't think we have a lot of hazardous waste right here.
Well, because you're saying that it can come in by barge and it can come in from rail. So that means hazardous waste could come from Buffalo, it comes from Youngstown, New York, Ohio, wherever.
Yeah, but the first thing I said, you may not have been here for it, is that the concept is to do an IREP, an Integrated Recycle and Energy Park, which means you try and do the waste and input the waste as close to the source as possible, and then give the energy back as close to the source as possible. So your overall carbon footprint is as low as you can possibly imagine. That's the goal.
Enough to sustain the facility, correct? Are you told?
I'm not not who told. I'm not too sure who told you that either.
One of the gentlemen that was speaking to the process.
Okay, I'm not sure which gentleman, but the process, the reference design that we have is it's called the 170-100, which means 170,000. This is from an engineer talk. Just give me a second on it. 170,000. You have to have a reference design, then you go up high and low and above and around. This design is based on 170,000 tons a year of MSW because that gives you a certain amount of a calorific value, a moisture content, and it gives you a reference condition. And from that, you have about the 100, the 170, 100 means you take out the recyclates that you want to go and preserve, and then you have moisture content and sorted exactly, and then you end up with this. You end up with this 100,000 that goes through the system. Right now, we've identified about 270,000, so it's well over what we would ever need for 170. Do we have a contract for that? No, we don't, because I don't have my permit yet. I don't have my permits accepted. I don't have a plant that's built yet.
Well, I guess my question is that this plant wouldn't be able to survive only processing Hamilton waste. Is that a fair statement?
No, it's not. I mean, you have more than enough waste here in the non-hazardous. There's all kinds of waste.
So really, there may be no need to ever bring any waste in from any other community other than Hamilton?
That would be fabulous. That would be absolutely fabulous. And that goes to my IREP concept, which means you have enough waste locally that you can process and give energy back. I'd love to be able to do that.
So you think then a plant like this would be welcome in a community like, say, Toronto? If you wanted to put that on their waterfront, they'd be just as excited?
You can put it in the waterfront, you can put it anywhere. Anywhere we have industrial locations. My preference is industrial locations.
The other question that I couldn't find anyone to answer was why Hamilton was chosen for this facility.
Actually, we looked at about 8 different locations in Ontario over the last 2.5 years.
What other locations, do you mind my asking? Just curious. I want to know who. I'm trying to figure out why Hamilton was chosen.
Because it's an industrial hub. When I look at the Golden Horseshoe, which you refer to as the Golden Horseshoe, you have a lot of industry there. So you have a lot of capability, you have a lot of natural synergies. To me, what would be natural synergies? You have waste that needs to be sent somewhere. And from my analysis, I've taken a look and I've seen a lot of the non-hazardous waste being transported quite long distances when I don't think it needs to. It looks to us that Hamilton Port had this type of industrial configuration. It had a lot of tenants. Within the Hamilton Port, and a lot of in the immediate, I guess, outside their property lines. I guess there's a lot of different organizations in that area. So they just look to be the most ideal location. Hamilton Port Authority was also very receptive to this idea. And so we've been working with them. It was a natural elimination is what it was. It just came out to be that was the best from a waste standpoint, from a close proximity to my industrial
So there
park.
would have been no consultation with any of the other communities that would have been in the running before Hamilton was
I don't
decided
think the
upon.
consultations come up until you go through the environmental screening process. So no, not until you get to the stage where we are right now.
Now, are you regulated by the Ontario Ministry of the Environment?
I'm sorry.
Are you regulated by the Ontario Ministry of the Environment or federal?
I think we're regulated by everyone. What my goal and my plan is and was and will be is to meet everybody's regulations. There are certain federal regulations, there's provincial regulations, there's municipal regulations, there's all, and that's what our experts are working their way through right now.
Who's got the money?
Yep.
Who's supplying the money to build this magic project?
The magic money starts with us.
And who is us?
This is, on one of these slides, there's a company called Leverage Green Energy, which is a private equity fund that owns the rights to this technology. And we are looking right now down and active negotiation with local corporations that will become our partners, because we are investing, we're co-investing, because we want to make sure that
I'm curious as to why, because the technology looks good.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Like it's
I'm an
great
engineer, I love it.
to take garbage and instead of putting it in a landfill, find a way to process it that has, the least amount of impact on the environment. Why aren't there any Canadian companies that are interested in investing in this process? Because ultimately, one of the things that people are wondering is who's going to be answerable to this if something goes wrong in the process.
Well, these are the discussions that we're having right now with the minister going through the permitting process. The question you're asking on safety, on operations, on industrial references. These are all the questions that we're answering right now, and the same thing I did too before I invested in the company. My company invested in it.
When a Canadian company is not invested in this process, because ultimately if there's problems, whether it's noise or odor or any kind of issues, if there's a barge full of waste that's coming into the harbor and it spills into the harbor, if you've got a Canadian company who's invested in it, there's always the fear that people will be showing up at the doorstep of that company and demanding some kind of recourse and saying, "What are you going to do about this mess?"
Your point is right on the mark.
And
is we are starting the process because we believe in it. We're in negotiations right now with Canadian companies to be Canadian partners, to be the majority Canadian partners, and to eventually take over our technology and to don't run a company again. We're a fund. We're not going to run a fund. The local Canadian companies are going to do all this.
So you're based in Ohio?
Leverage Green Energy is in a suburb of DC, but it's owned by the investors are Scandinavian funds and a couple of companies out of London. They're all international, but it's a U.S. fund.
so if it's only going to be processing Hamilton waste, there really wouldn't be any need for waste to be brought in by barge, would there? Wouldn't it all be brought in by either rail or truck?
I hope not. That's a terrific. Technically, if you're self-contained, the footprint's significantly reduced. The emissions are reduced. Again, I'm not sure who was here when we first started talking, but if you take a look at the total footprint from all this transportation cost, it's deplorable.
Well, exactly. And plus the danger of transporting waste over a significant distance.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I think that's what you're going to see. Is you're going to see more of these become closer to the, first of all, an industrial bus, because that's really where the most benefit can be gained. Theoretically, you can also go to the landfills. This company, you may or may not have seen it there, Plasma Power, is working with a company in Belgium called Group Michels at a landfill, and they're mining the landfill, which means that's going to be a brownfield to a greenfield. You'll have a perpetual landfill because you have the technical capability of doing that.
So my understanding, and my history in Hamilton doesn't go back very far. I've only been here about a year. And I'm wondering why specifically that port site has been chosen. I understand it's zoned industrial, but if there's no requirement for waste to be brought in by barge, then could this not have been located in an area that that is not so close to residential?
I'm not sure why the big emphasis is on the water. The water is it's an opportunity, but the emphasis really on the selection criteria has been as an industrial area, heavily concentrated industrial area. Hamilton Port Authority is very interested. The tenants that we've been talking with there are very interested. They're just very receptive, and it's a deselection process, if you will. And so we ended up there.
But a good business decision,
Excellent.
You're not always going to want to go with, the Port Authority may be very hungry for your business, but you have to decide whether that's the best place to locate your business.
Yeah.
And when I think, like, my understanding is that there is a landfill site that has been abandoned or is not in use here in Hamilton, and I'm wondering why sites like that were not used, or were they considered? I don't know.
Not in the same way that Hamilton Port Authority is, because we have more of an interest there. There's more people that are interested there in the waste side, more people interested there in the receipt of heat, electricity. It is a business decision, as you described. You have to have a profitable entity, and that seems to be where everything turned out to be the best.
I think
One of the other things I'd like to bring up too is that you've got a 30, 40-year life of a plant, and the omnivorous ability of this type of a process means you can change waste streams as your industry changes, as long as you have an organic component, which means the organic is what transforms the energy. So if you start first 10 years doing this type of material, and then the industry around the port changes, which it is, you still have the ability of working and processing that material as well. So even though some industries may come and go, the reliability long term is there will always be something that you'll be able to process and work with.
right.
So
But then, the other side of the coin is that it provides a little bit of unpredictability. That,
yeah, it provides unpredictability, but what you
start
have.
out with one mandate, but if the situation changes and for whatever reason, maybe there's a requirement for a greater supply of the waste, or the nature of the waste changes, it's not like now the place is built and it's working. Nobody's going to,
There's a lot of unpredictability in anything that you come into. And on a business decision such as this, you enter into long-term contracts, like 10 year, 15 year, whatever. You have the security of those type of contract to get you through the hump that you need to for full commercialization and profitability, so that you're able to go and operate through these ups and downs that you described.
Yeah. I think the challenge.
Sensitivity analysis is what you just described.
Well, exactly, because I stand up on the edge of the mountain and I look out over Hamilton and I look at the smokestack and the smokestack and the smokestack and the smokestack, and I think on one level, well, who's going to notice one more smokestack? Who's going to notice one more processing plant? And sometimes, there's part of me that feels that that's why Hamilton was chosen, because who's going to notice one more manufacturing plant plunked down on the waterfront?
But you won't see our smokestack. We don't have smokestacks like that.
Well,
And
no,
that's the benefit.
We'll see the trucks or the rails or
benefit.
whatever coming in, and
Well, hopefully not.
is there, there's going to be, at least during the construction, a dust
yes.
component.
Absolutely correct. During the construction phase, you're absolutely going to have construction vehicles. You're
And what
absolutely
about the noise component? Like, at this point, I haven't even been able to get anybody to give me a clear answer as to whether your facility is going to be under federal jurisdiction, provincial jurisdiction, municipal jurisdiction. Who's going to oversee to make sure that your company continues to obey the rules and work within the environmental standards that any company that's doing
Actually, what we're going through right now is both federal, provincial. We're going through Ministry of Environment. We're going through all those.
Right, no, I
think I have multiple.
To get it done, you have to meet
No, I
that.
think I have multiple overseers. That's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
And I think I want to continue to have multiple overseers because it's a federal installation, and it also has other jurisdictions that we're going through.
So, how is it going to be? Is it going to be regularly inspected? Like, how is that? How is it monitored to make sure that
I
you
haven't gotten that
continue
far
to
with
be
the
as-
ministry to find out how that's going to be. We'll be able to figure that out and have that on our website. I'm not sure how the rules play out for that type. I know I've been lots of different plants, lots of different places, and we have lots of different monitors installed throughout the plant that record process parameters. I'm not sure off the tip of my head because I'm not the expert. That'll have to be determined, but we have built into the systems all of those permanent recording devices so that they can be monitored.
How many jobs during the construction phase and how many ongoing? You know yet?
My guess is about 50 during the operation. The construction is going to depend on what company we actually end up with because
Do you mind if I grab your name?
Sure. My name is Heather Miller. M-I-L-L-A-R.
Do you live in the general vicinity or
Yeah, actually, I live the corner of Vine.
a lot of different products.
Sorry if I can, I just had one more question that I could ask. Now, somebody brought up the date of this event. How was this date chosen? Because that's been a bit of a sort of sticking point. You know the council has protested the date officially. How did this date come about that it was held tonight?
This date was decided months ago. It was decided months ago, and it was just put in our schedule. We had the notice of commencement on the 3rd, and the letters all went out. It was just decided it would be a Thursday night, it would be this night, it would be held from 6 to 9, so that as you can see, we could get the maximum participation, wouldn't calling people, asking people to leave work to come here.
But when you're saying maximum participation, people are saying that it's Holy Thursday, a lot of people have church services or a long weekend where they're going away. So what I'm trying to get at was it an oversight or was it intentional to pick Holy Thursday?
It was neither. It wasn't an oversight and it wasn't intentional. It was just part of the schedule, part of our scheduling process. We picked a date, we ran with it. There was nothing other than it was a scheduling. And this is like the first open house. We plan on having more. We plan on having web information. We have a Q&A sessions. We plan on getting a lot of information out.
Okay, thank you. I shouldn't have boxed you into two answers. That's why
No, that's fine.
I'll apologize for
No,
that.
that's fine. Keep asking more questions. I'm more than happy to answer them, Joy.
I think I'm done. Thank you.
You're welcome.